Hi everyone, Erwin here. Recently, I was asked to give a presentation to a group of grade 11s and grade 12s who are in accounting and economics. I gave them a presentation around money and investing, and this is the presentation I wish I saw when I was their age. So first off, my name is Erwin. For those who don't know me, uh, my team and I, we've done close to 500 million in transactions, all income properties, pretty much no new construction, uh, 350 past clients since 2010. I've conducted over 300 podcast interviews since 2016. Most proudly, we have more than 45 real estate investor millionaire clients. They made $1 million or more in the investment properties we help them acquire. Many of them have divested as well. And for many of them, they needed only as little as 2 houses to live off of. Myself personally, I've had interest in about 40 properties since 2005. I've been a landlord for 20 years in Ontario. That's why all the gray hair. My team and I, we've won Realtor of the Year to investors 4 times. But between my wife and I, we own 3 financial services companies, and I'm here to share my experience, how we help hardworking Canadians by being their Google Maps towards their financial freedom. Hey, quick disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not an accountant. I'm not your accountant, especially. So I'm just here to share experiences. This is all for education and entertainment purposes. So red pill, blue pill. As I explained to the kids, most adults, Canadians, are not the greatest at financial education. Um, so there's first off, what is money? Honestly, most Canadians can't answer it. And why is this so important? Now, here's some of the stats. According to a 2019 Canadian Financial Capability Survey conducted by the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, only 61% of Canadians could correctly answer 3 out of 5 questions uh, on the subjects of interest compounding, inflation, and risk diversification. Only 47% of Canadians correctly answered a specific question on inflation. Why I bring this up is because once you understand inflation, where it comes from, only then will you seek out the solutions. And when you understand the problem, you seek out solutions that generally point you towards hard assets. I'll talk about, and I'll explain a bit more in the rest of this presentation. Now, this report came out from the federal government earlier this year. You can see this is dated January from 2025. I honestly don't know why this did not get more media attention, but the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, actually referred to this report several times. Social mobility in question. So this report says by 2040, downward social mobility could become the norm in Canada, meaning more Canadians could end up worse off than their parents. Home ownership becomes out of reach for most. Wealth concentrates among fewer people. AI and automation disrupt job markets. People live more isolated lives, digitally and economically. I'd argue a lot of these problems are already here. Look at this home affordability. Canada is the red line at the top. You can see around 2006-ish that the ratio between home price to disposable income has just surged. And again, it has surged in 2015 when a certain prime minister was elected. And then you have the blue line, which is America, which just serves as a bit of a baseline. You can see that our housing prices do not quite make sense compared to incomes. And here's some stats. Home prices in Canada over the last 10 years have increased 86%. Over the last 20 years, prices have increased 20%. Disposable income in Canada over the last 20 years has only gone up 21%. You see that? Income up 21%, home prices up 200%. Something might be wrong here, and I don't see how this improves, which is why I'm saying I don't see how many young people can think they can afford a home today, let alone do we have to wait till 2040. So I knew a lot about a lot of these problems when I was a while ago. Again, red pill, blue pill. When you understand where inflation comes from, you naturally will seek out solutions. So for example, when my daughter was born, I knew that she would cost me a lot of money should she ever, for her sake, want to go to university. So I bought her this house back into March 2014, just 3 months after she was born. Again, understood the problem. Inflation erodes savings, and I need to invest in order to afford her future expenses, like university, college, housing, around all those sorts of things. So hence I bought her a hard asset that I could rent out. Now, but don't worry, I'm just telling this to the kids. I tell them, don't worry, I'm old and I've survived a couple things. I come to realize I am 3 times older than this audience. So I am indeed old relative to the audience. I survived Y2K, which young people probably don't even know, the dot-com bubble bursting in September 9/11, the financial credit crisis, SARS, COVID, Asian flu, bird flu, swine flu. Here's some of the things I've learned along the way. So when I was those kids' age, I was probably around 21 years old, so just slightly older than what they were. I was actually going to university during the dot-com bubble burst, and including I remember being in financial markets class, third year course during September 11th, the horrible attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City. Now, interestingly enough, that recession only lasted until November 2001. So again, September 11th happened in 2001. The recession ended November 2001. That's really fast. The end of recession after the biggest attack ever on U.S. soil, the biggest loss of life through a terrorist act in U.S. soil. Back then, the stock market had corrected. We had rising unemployment. We had all these tech companies that are going under at the time. So why was the 2001 recession so short? This is where I actually asked the kids, like, how many of you are taking history class? Surprisingly, nobody put their hand up. So then I went on to say old people things. Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it, right? History doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So let's see what happens. Let's talk about what happened during this recession, right? Interest rates were cut in 2001. This is in America. Interest rates were cut from 6.5% to 1.75%, making borrowing cheaper. Businesses and people could spend more money. Because rates were so low, there was no point in saving money and earning interest. You just go ahead and borrow and spend. This stimulated the economy. $40 billion was committed to rebuild and support emergency service. And as I told the kids, I don't like to pull punches. I like to speak the truth. Literally go to war with Iraq and Afghanistan. Again, this was just the money that was authorized back then. The total bill was a lot bigger than 40 billion. Gave $15 billion to help airlines stay open and avoid job losses. Remember, this was September 9/11. Like many airlines were grounded. Travel was all in disarray. All the added security costs and also the implementation of all the added security at airports. Cut taxes and mailed checks so people had more money to spend. Right? That's how they ended the recession. In Canada, we did something similar. In 2001, Canada cut interest rates from 5.75% to 2.25. Not as extreme as Canadians, but that's pretty steep. That's a pretty steep cut. $7.7 billion over 5 years to increase security around airports and our border security. Now, this does not include the war in Afghanistan. So how is this all paid for? I asked the students this. I think the students don't have answers for this, and I don't think half of adults have answers for this. So let me explain with an example of Pikachu cards. So this Pikachu card, this is the Pikachu Illustrator card. At the time, it was the most expensive card to ever transact at $233,000. Right, most expensive and rarest Pokemon card of all time. So let's continue with this example. Assume there are only 4 Pikachu cards in the whole world, and you bought one for, just to keep the numbers easy, 200,000. So remember, so there's 4 cards in the whole world, you own one of them. It's in your hand, you paid $200,000 for it. You think it's a good investment, right? Now let's say a 5th card is printed. A 5th card is printed. How do you feel? You own one, your understanding of the world, there was only 4 ever, and this ultra rare, ultra expensive Pikachu card. How would you feel knowing a 5th was printed? Right? Now, let's just back up a little bit. So originally when you bought that one Pikachu card, there was only 4, each valued at $200,000. So the total value of all the Pikachu cards in the whole world was $800,000. Now there's 5 cards. So how much is the card now worth? Is that new card? Is that 5th card now worth $200,000 as well? So the total value of all the 5 Pikachu cards in the world, is that now $1 million, or is it $800,000? And your Pikachu card that you already bought is now worth $160,000. Which is it? Is your card still worth 200,000, or is it now worth 160,000? Now, say you thought this again, you bought this for investment purposes. So you held that card and you held that card for 10 years, but more are printed. 5 more cards are printed. Now there's 10 ultra rare Pikachu cards in the world. The supply is now increased by 100%. What's your card now worth? Is it worth more or less? Understand now, half Canadians can't answer this correctly. Now again, imagine this is your retirement fund. Remember, imagine this was your savings, your nest egg, right? Now understand, the supply of money has also increased over 100% over the last 10 years. This is a chart of M2, which is the term for money. This is specifically the US dollars. This is all the US dollars in the whole universe, right? The supply of US dollars has increased 121% over the last 10 years. COVID alone increased the dollar supply by 40%. Right? And what if people are paid in Pikachu dollars? So my friend, the school principal, Miss Reed, imagine her salary was 1 Pikachu card per year. She's absolutely worth more than $200,000 a year. Now, then remember, we had that 5th card printed, and now, so Miss Reed's income, in reality, it fell by 20%. That Pikachu card, after the 5th card was printed, her Pikachu card is worth $160,000. What if even more cards are printed? Miss Reed will eventually refuse payment in Pikachu cards. Now, this may all sound silly, but this has happened in history before. Remember, I asked if anyone studied history. If you study, for example, the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? During the U.S. back in the U.S. the Soviet Union Cold War against the Americans. They're fighting a war against the Americans. They're building nuclear weapons. They're sending astronauts and rockets to the space. They're spending all this money, right? And eventually, nobody wanted that currency anymore. And so the value of that currency, of the Russian ruble, collapsed, right? So again, this happens in history. And literally, this actually happened. Back to the example of the Pikachu cards, there were only 39 in the whole world, and 2 more were printed. 2 more were printed. So again, would you be happy about it? I don't think any holder of those Pikachu cards would not be happy about it. Now, this is from the Canadian government. This is a comparison of different budgets depending on when they release that budget. And the red line is the current plan, most recent budget plan for the Canadian government, in that they forecast that they will spend more money, they will go further into deficit as a percentage of our economy each year. So again, they're spending money they don't have, right? They're spending more and more, and again, they're spending money they don't have. Now back to that recession example of 2001. How is the recovery paid for? And how is every major bad modern economic event paid for? Governments borrow more and more money, and most of the time they don't actually pay it back. Instead, they just roll it forward. They just issue more debt. They keep borrowing, they print more money to make it all work. That creates what's called a fiat currency, as in it's not backed by anything. It's not a hard asset. And over time, it leads to inflation, prices go up. And we see it as well. Let's compare the increase of money supply. So this is global money supply compared to, say, Bitcoin. On the left, the orange line is Bitcoin, and the white line is a proxy for global money supply in US dollars, right? And on the right, we see the same thing except for gold. Again, the white is a proxy for US money supply, the number of US dollars in the system, out and everywhere, out in the world. And you can see that gold, the price of gold, closely follows the amount of supply of US dollars. So you can see how Bitcoin and gold are almost the opposite of a fiat currency. By definition, they are hard assets. Now let's look at the stock market, the S&P 500, the 500 of the largest US companies in the world. Over the last 10 years, the stock market has gone up 150%. COVID alone, it's gone up 58% since COVID. Now, just because we're talking about advice, just because we're talking about stocks, and because I'm talking to young people, Stocks are a very complicated subject. So, me personally, I always refer back to this quote. So, I deliberately give screen captures of articles so that you can go back and Google these sources. For example, if you just Google this headline, Tim Ferriss asked Warren Buffett how to invest $1 million, you will find this article. So, please, I suggest you read this whole article. So, to summarize, though, Warren's advice to Tim Ferriss, who's one of my favorite podcasters out there, if you're not willing to invest 15 hours a week to research stocks, then you are thus an amateur. Just buy an inexpensive index fund like the S&P 500 and go back to work, go back to living, right? So that's the extent of my stock advice for young people. Prices of everything up, including the Big Mac. The Big Mac, there literally is an index for it. The blue line being Big Macs. See, the prices of Big Macs have gone up over time, actually faster than the consumer price index, which is a very common measure of inflation. And it's not that Big Macs got tastier. Actually, I'll get that in a second. Oh, and also housing has gone up over time as well. Housing in the US has gone up 95% over the last 10 years. Oh, since COVID, 52%, right? The real price of housing in Canada, so adjusted for inflation, prices in Canada have detached from reality. If you use the Americans as a baseline, you can see this massive gap between the price of Canadian real estate in inflation-adjusted terms, right? Does that make you really want to invest more in Canada or less in Canada? Do you think this is a stable real estate market or an unstable real estate market? How much further higher can this real estate market go? These are all questions every discerning investor should be asking themselves. Now, back to the Big Mac example. It's not that the Big Mac didn't get tastier. And this is my daughter's house. It didn't get any nicer. It's still the same house. It just takes more dollars to buy it. That's essentially inflation. I'm not getting more value out of whatever the asset is. It just takes more dollars to buy it. Again, this is my daughter's house in 2014. Paid $248,000 for this house. And 2 occasions we renovated it. Originally, it was a student rental, and then phase 2, it became a legal basement apartment house. Anyone want to guess what I sold it for in 2024? If you want to write in the comments, please do. I sold this house for $740,000 Canadian in 2024. The rent for this property is the annual rent for this property is $33,600 per year. Rent yield is a measurement of annual rent divided by the price of the home. For this example, 4.5%. So this, if you write that down, 4.5%. I told the students to do the same thing. Write that number down. You're all really smart students. I'm sure you can remember 4.5% if you can't write it down. Now, I took that money and we bought this house here in San Antonio, Texas. This house is 2,200 square feet. I should also mention this house here in Hamilton that I bought for my daughter. It was built in the 1950s, and it's about 600 square feet, main floor, plus the basement. The basement would be under 500 square feet, right? So in real estate terms, we don't count the square footage for basement. So this house is somewhere around 600 square feet. And then again, compare this to the house we bought for investment purposes in San Antonio, Texas. This is 2,200 square feet, so almost 4 times bigger. This house is a lot newer at 2005. It's only 20 years old. It's on a cul-de-sac. This is a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom. The rent for this property is $2,300 plus utilities. It's leased to the sellers. The sellers decided to sell the house to us, and they stayed on as tenants. Anyone guess the price? So you at home, guess the price. I made the kids guess as well. I had guesses ranging from 200 to 300 to 400 to 800 to $1 million. So what we paid for this house, $265. Right? Renovations for this house will be $35,000. But again, the sellers decided to stay, so we've spent less than half of that so far. When the renovations are done, my prediction is this house is worth $330,000 based on my own analysis. So remember that rent yield for that Hamilton property, duplex, with 2 families living in that home, 4.5%. This one is 9.2%. Which do you think is a better investment? This property here in San Antonio is in Texas, where the landlord has the majority of the rights, and there's no rent control. So Why real estate is the best asset class. Again, this is my own professional opinion. I can buy things below market value. It's really hard for me to buy gold or Bitcoin or stocks under market value. You just pay what the market dictates. I've never seen an easier way to get rich. Again, in my experience, I have a lot of expert knowledge around real estate, and I've seen my own clients, over 45 of them, make $1 million or more on their real estate investments. I haven't exactly seen that in any other investment class, but though Bitcoin is definitely catching up. I can mortgage this property. My clients and I can all mortgage these types of properties for 70% mortgages. We can positive cash flow in US dollars. And again, that's positive. It's hard to positive cash flow anything in Canada. Risk adjusted as well. Tax advantage. Real estate in general is tax advantage, and there's a lot of deductions I get in real estate that I can't get in other asset classes like Bitcoin, gold, stocks, right? I can hedge against AI because everybody still needs a roof, at the end of the day, still needs a roof over their head. I can hedge against inflation as well, robots and automation in general. Everyone still needs a roof over their head. There's a massive imbalance in job creation between Canada and the USA. So these are stats that I track myself. So I just want to summarize everything. Again, I track the investment dollars in jobs being created, permanent jobs being created by new manufacturing announcements from 2020 and on. So this is my own compilation. So for every Canadian job that's created, the Americans create 1.66 jobs. For every dollar in Canada that's invested, $2.58 is invested in the US. So you see the massive disparity between investment and job creation between the US and Canada. Whose economy do you think will grow faster? Who will become richer, Canadians or Americans? This is for household wealth in Canada, divided by age cohort. So my point to the kids is, who benefited from all this inflation? Mainly the older people. Where to find the money to invest? Because I know naturally these kids are going to be asking these things. My advice to them would be, I'd be asking people who benefited from this the most. Hopefully their parents. Here's an excerpt from the Financial Post. Home buyers rely on bigger gifts from parents. Parents on here on average are giving their children $204,000 towards their first home. Ron Butler, who was on my podcast, was saying that he's seeing gifts from parents to children around $300,000. So, and again, I know these kids are wondering, how do I get started investing? So I give them an example of how I'd ask my own parents to co-invest with me. I would get good grades. I think a parent doesn't like to have doesn't like their kids having good grades. I should mention this was a private school, so these parents are paying a lot of money for this school. I would read several books, such as Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, Real Estate Investing in Canada by John R. Campbell. I listened to podcasts. I'd show them good deals, such as on my own website, iwin.sharesafar.com. I teach them the benefits of investing early in real estate. And I'll throw my own hat in for suggested podcasts. My own is one of the most successful in the real estate space. I'm probably the second longest running podcast in the real estate space in Canada. And also we're really niche. We're really focused on real estate investment. This podcast is ranked as high as number 81 in the business category of all of iTunes. So a little podcast for Canadians around real estate investing. It's come pretty far. So again, I'd show my parents good deals, such as something like this. Again, remember, from a Canadian's context, they haven't seen anything like this before, such as this property is just outside Austin, Texas. This is brand new, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, built in 2005. Again, this is a brand new house, 1,420 square feet. Anyone now can buy this for $245,000, $600,000. The rent is minimal. Understand that the Americans, that in their culture, they don't include appliances. So most of this money is for appliances and probably window coverings. Projected rent is almost $1,800 plus utilities. And then let's just work it out. We're talking about $173 per square foot to own this house on land, the equivalent of $242 Canadian. where can you possibly buy anything for $242 Canadian per square foot on land in Canada? Now, what's interesting about this property is located right next to the Samsung plant, including their $65 billion investment to build three microchip manufacturing fabrication plants. This investment will create 5,000 permanent jobs. Now, there's already over 1,000 people working in one of the plants that's already been open for over a year. The median salary for a Samsung employee here is $96,000. That's an estimate, but that's a lot of money. Increased rents and rental demand and rising home prices are already occurring in this area. So maybe this would be an area you consider to invest. For more information on how to invest in the US, even as any sort of non-resident, as a Canadian, as a Chinese national, anyone, iwin.sharesfr.com. And this is only available to my clients and I through my partnership with Share. So here's a classic wealth lesson on compounding rates. So here's a classic wealth lesson from one of my favorite authors on the subject of personal finances. This is David Chilton, who is also a CBC Dragon, author of Wealthy Barber. This is the picture of his second book. And to me, David explains compounding interest better than anyone I've ever seen. So I want to play for you this video. Again, resources, you can listen to podcasts. So for example, and a good place to start would be this episode here with Shane Grandison. He's a mechanic from Montreal, and he's already purchased 2 properties now in the States without ever having to leave Montreal. And for anyone interested, you can always follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I don't know if any of those young people follow people on Facebook. After the meeting, they were all asking me for my Instagram, which I've deleted. And my friendly advice to the young people is, in business situations, ask for people's LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn, my name is very unique. If you just look up Erwin Cito, you'll find me. So yeah. And of course, read Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. All right. So if you enjoyed that, please like and subscribe. If you have any feedback, I'd love to hear more, as I'd be interested in giving this presentation to more high schoolers and elementary school students. So is there something I missed, something you think I can add, something you think that's really important? I had some people comment on my Facebook, they think whole life insurance is important for teenagers to know. If that's you too, please let me know. All right, till next time.